They kicked the human's dog. The human didn't need to retaliate. The dog did, reaches its dramatic apex when Fenris sabotages the gravity field during a diplomatic gala, sending his tormentor Threx tumbling helplessly through zero gravity. Standing center stage beneath the panicking Vulgarian, Fenris unleashes a primal growl that reverberates through the hall, a controlled display of power that forces the assembly to acknowledge his sentience and dignity. The grand hall of Station Aegis 9 shimmered like a living jewel. Its vast dome housed 1,000,000 species in perfect ecological harmony. Or at least, that was the ideal. Quantum-locked atmospheric bubbles drifted like soap spheres, each containing the precise gaseous mixture required by its occupants. Gravity fields shifted subtly underfoot as representatives from worlds of varying masses navigated the space, their bodies adjusting seamlessly to the changes. Ambassador Selene Kwan straightened the collar of her formal diplomatic tunic, its subtle earth-blue hue a deliberate reminder of her home planet's oceans. 30 years into humanity's membership in the Orion Trade Coalition, and still, the older species regarded them with barely concealed condescension. Novices, she'd heard the Vulgarian delegation mutter during yesterday's trade summit. Bipedal apes with delusions of significance. At her side, Fenris padded silently, his enhanced canine form moving with deliberate grace. The German Shepherd mix wore his own diplomatic vest emblazoned with Earth's emblem, a controversial statement of equality that had raised eyebrows throughout the coalition. His amber eyes surveyed the grand hall with unnerving intelligence, cataloging exits and potential threats with military precision. "Ready, partner?" Selene asked quietly, her fingers brushing the neural link patch behind his ear. Fenris didn't need the link to communicate his readiness. A slight tail wag and forward tilt of his ears conveyed everything, but the diplomatic protocol mandated formal acknowledgement. Through the link, she felt his calm assurance pulse against her consciousness. "Always ready, Ambassador." Today's negotiations concerned the disputed mining rights in the Cygnus Arm, relatively routine by coalition standards. Earth had submitted a modest proposal for expansion into 3 uninhabited systems, backed by environmental impact assessments that exceeded coalition requirements. The Vulgarians had objected, claiming ancestral territorial rights that predated human spaceflight by millennia. As they approached the central dais, Selene noted the subtle shifts in posture among the assembled delegates. The Meridians, with their crystalline bodies that refracted light in emotion-indicative patterns, glowed a diplomatic blue-green. The massive Corvallian ambassador rumbled a greeting that Selene's translator rendered as cautiously respectful. Only the Vulgarian delegation remained stiffly aloof, their segmented exoskeletons clicking softly in what Selene had learned to recognize as disapproval. "The Earth delegation approaches," announced Council Speaker Ilhan, his multifaceted eyes swiveling to track their progress. "Ambassador Kwan and Attaché Fenris will present the human position on Cygnus territorial expansion." Selene ascended the steps to the speaker's platform, Fenris maintaining perfect heel position. They had rehearsed this moment extensively, the first time a non-human Earth representative would address the full coalition. A precedent-setting moment that had been fought for through years of bureaucratic battles. "Esteemed representatives of the Orion Trade Coalition," Selene began, her voice carrying through the hall's perfect acoustics. "Earth extends gratitude for this opportunity to address our shared future in the Cygnus sector." She proceeded with the formal address, outlining Earth's proposal with precision. Throughout her speech, she noted sub-envoy Threx of the Vulgarian delegation watching not her, but Fenris, with an intensity that triggered warning signals in her diplomatic instincts. As she concluded the formal portion of her address and opened the floor to questions, Threx rose from his position. His exoskeleton gleamed with iridescent oils that Selene knew signified high status among his kind. "The Vulgarian Protectorate acknowledges Earth's creative presentation," Threx's translator conveyed, the slight pause implying derision. However, we question the appropriateness of allowing a non-sentient, decorative creature to occupy space reserved for diplomatic representatives. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Fenris remained perfectly still, though Celine felt a slight tension through their link. Attaché Fenris holds full diplomatic credentials, recognized by Earth and ratified by Coalition Charter Article 17. Celine responded smoothly. His enhanced cognitive and communicative abilities qualify him as a sentient partner under Coalition law. Threx's mandibles clicked rapidly, the equivalent of a dismissive snort. Earth's definition of sentience is charmingly broad. The Vulgarian Protectorate does not recognize quadrupedal pets as equals, regardless of whatever enhancements you claim. Before Celine could formulate a response that wouldn't escalate tensions, Threx stepped forward, ostensibly to examine a display panel on the dais. As he passed behind Fenris, his lower limb shot out in what appeared to be a casual movement. The kick landed squarely on Fenris's hindquarters. The impact wasn't particularly forceful. Threx clearly intended humiliation rather than injury, but the deliberate nature of the act sent a shockwave through the assembly. Gasps and the equivalent vocalizations from non-oxygen breathers filled the hall. Fenris didn't yelp, didn't growl, didn't so much as turn his head. Through their link, Celine felt a cold clarity replace his usual warm presence, a transformation from companion to something far more dangerous. His military training, usually kept carefully beneath the surface of his diplomatic persona, surged forward like ice water. Celine's hand instinctively moved to his neural patch, ready to send a calming signal. Then she stopped herself. This wasn't just an insult to her dog. This was a calculated diplomatic assault on Earth itself. "Sub-Envoy Threx," she said, her voice carrying an edge that silenced the hall. "I formally cite Article 12 of the Coalition Diplomatic Code regarding physical assault on a credentialed representative." Threx's translator glitched momentarily as he processed her response. He had clearly expected either an emotional outburst or humiliated silence, not a legal challenge. "Surely the ambassador jests," he recovered, mandibles clicking rapidly. "One cannot assault a mere animal. I simply adjusted its position." Council Speaker Ilhan intervened, his multifaceted eyes swiveling between the parties. "The citation has been registered. The Council will review the incident through hall security recordings. Until determination, this session is suspended." As the assembly dispersed in a buzz of polyglot commentary, Celine maintained perfect composure. Only when she and Fenris had returned to the relative privacy of Earth's embassy quarters did she kneel beside him, her hands gently examining him for injury. "Are you hurt?" she asked aloud, though their link made the question redundant. "Physical damage, negligible," came his response through the neural connection. "Status, operational." The formal, almost mechanical phrasing concerned her more than any complaint would have. It was the language he reverted to when accessing his military protocols, the ones supposedly deactivated when he was reassigned to diplomatic service. "This isn't a combat situation, Fenris," she said softly. "We'll file a formal protest and—" The Vulgarian deliberately violated Coalition protocol to undermine Earth's standing. Fenris interrupted, his thoughts precise. Diplomatic response inadequate. Celine frowned. "What are you suggesting? We can't exactly challenge him to a duel." Fenris didn't respond verbally, but through their link came a series of impressions. Careful planning, system access, calculated inconvenience rather than harm. "Absolutely not," Celine said firmly. "Whatever you're thinking, it could jeopardize everything we've worked for. Earth needs this mining agreement." Fenris finally looked up at her, his amber eyes reflecting an intelligence that went far beyond enhanced canine cognition. The military augmentation program had created something unique in him, something that occasionally made even Celine uneasy. Trust me, Ambassador. He sent finally. I will protect our interests. A chime at the door interrupted their silent standoff. Celine straightened her tunic and composed her features before opening it to reveal Delegate Leora of the Meridian Collective. The crystalline being's surface facets shimmered with subtle color patterns that Celine had learned to read as concerned empathy. Ambassador Quan, Leora's harmonics translated into greeting. I came to express the collective's distress at today's incident. Thank you, Delegate, Celine replied, gesturing for the Meridian to enter. Your support is appreciated. Leora's crystalline form caught the light as she moved into the room, refracting it in complex patterns. The Vulgarians have long resisted Earth's integration. Today's action was predictable, if regrettable. Fenris had risen to a formal sitting position, acknowledging the visitor with dignified attention. Leora turned toward him, her facets shifting to a deeper blue. The collective remembers when our own non-bipedal members faced similar prejudice, she said, directing her words to Fenris rather than Celine. We discovered that sometimes the fight in the dog is still a force to be reckoned with, even when the dog is in the diplomat. The oddly specific phrasing caught Celine's attention. Before she could question it, Leora's colors shifted to formal departure patterns. The Council reviews the incident tomorrow. The Meridian Collective stands with Earth. With that, she glided from the room, leaving behind a faint trail of harmonic resonance. What did she mean by that? Celine wondered aloud. Fenris didn't respond, but his ears had perked forward in a way that Celine recognized as significant interest. That night, as Celine slept, Fenris silently rose from his cushion beside her bed. His claws made no sound on the station's composite flooring as he moved to the environmental control panel near the door. Using his muzzle with practiced precision, he manipulated the interface to access station schematics. The military enhancement program had given him more than just neural link capability and increased intelligence. His implants allowed direct interface with most standard systems, a feature originally designed for battlefield reconnaissance that proved equally useful in diplomatic settings. Station Aegis 9's security was impressive, but designed primarily to prevent external threats. Internal systems remained relatively accessible to credentialed representatives, which Fenris officially was. Within minutes, he had located the Vulgarian delegation's quarters and accessed their environmental controls. He didn't sabotage anything, didn't trigger alarms. Instead, he implemented a series of subtle, almost imperceptible adjustments to Sub-Envoy Threx's quarters. Slight fluctuations in gravity every 73 minutes, occasional temperature shifts of just 2 degrees, lighting that would dim by 5% at random intervals. Nothing harmful, nothing provable, just enough to ensure Threx would find his sleep cycle disturbed by inexplicable discomfort. Satisfied with his first countermove, Fenris returned to his cushion and settled into a light doze, one ear remaining alert for any change in Celine's breathing patterns. Morning arrived with news that the Council had reviewed the incident and determined it inconclusive, a political compromise that satisfied no one but avoided open conflict. Celine received the news with diplomatic composure that masked her inner frustration. They're afraid of antagonizing the Vulgarians, she told Fenris, as they prepared for the day's sessions. The Protectorate controls too many key trade routes. Fenris walked beside her as they headed toward the Grand Hall, his posture alert but relaxed. Through their link, Celine sensed an unusual satisfaction emanating from him, but chose not to probe further. Sometimes, with Fenris, it was better not to know certain details. As they entered the hall, Celine immediately noticed Sub-Envoy Threx among the Vulgarian delegation. The normally immaculate diplomat appeared slightly disheveled, his exoskeleton lacking its usual high polish. His movements seemed jittery, mandibles clicking in patterns that suggested irritation. Throughout the morning's proceedings, Threx's discomfort became increasingly apparent. He shifted positions frequently, adjusted his atmospheric settings repeatedly, and twice requested technical assistance for his translator unit. When Celine rose to address the assembly regarding Earth's environmental protection guarantees, she noticed Threx's attention fixed on her with unmistakable hostility. By midday break, rumors circulated among the delegates that the Vulgarian quarters were experiencing unexplained technical difficulties. Celine overheard a maintenance technician mentioning that diagnostic systems showed no malfunctions. Yet Threx insisted something was wrong. "Fenris," she said quietly, as they returned to their quarters for the recess. "Would you happen to know anything about Sub-Envoy Threx's technical problems?" Fenris looked up at her with perfect canine innocence. But through their link came a distinct impression of satisfied justice. "Environmental systems occasionally fluctuate," he replied. "Perhaps the Sub-Envoy's species is particularly sensitive." Celine sighed. "If I ask you directly whether you've interfered with the Vulgarian quarters, will you lie to me?" Fenris maintained eye contact, his amber gaze unwavering. "I have protected our interests without causing harm. Is further detail necessary?" The phrasing was so perfectly diplomatic that Celine couldn't help a small smile. "I should reprimand you." "But you won't," came his confident response. She knelt to his level, her voice dropping to ensure privacy. "Listen to me. I understand the impulse to respond to yesterday's insult, but we can't afford complications. The Coalition Grand Gala is tonight. All senior representatives will be there. We need to secure votes for the mining proposal, not escalate tensions." Fenris tilted his head slightly, a gesture he used when considering complex problems. "Understood, Ambassador. No escalation." Something about his ready agreement triggered Celine's suspicion, but before she could press further, her communications panel chimed with an incoming message from Earth Command, a reminder that larger stakes than personal dignity were at play. The Coalition Grand Gala represented the pinnacle of interspecies diplomacy, a carefully orchestrated event where the appearance of harmony mattered more than its reality. The massive central atrium had been transformed with floating light sculptures and gravity-defying floral arrangements from 100 worlds. Celine wore formal diplomatic attire, the subtle earth blue now accented with silver threading that caught the light as she moved through the gathering. Fenris walked at her side, his diplomatic vest freshly groomed, a small earth flag pin attached to his collar. They had barely completed the formal entry procession when Sub-Envoy Threx approached, flanked by 2 junior Vulgarian aides. Celine noted with interest that he appeared significantly more composed than earlier, his exoskeleton once again gleaming with status oils. "Ambassador Quan," his translator conveyed with perfect politeness. "The Vulgarian Protectorate wishes to address yesterday's unfortunate incident." Celine maintained neutral diplomatic expression. "The Earth delegation acknowledges your approach, Sub-Envoy." Threx's mandibles clicked in what her cultural briefings identified as the Vulgarian equivalent of clearing one's throat. "It appears possible that during yesterday's proceedings, inadvertent contact may have occurred between myself and your attaché. If offense was perceived, the Protectorate offers appropriate recognition of misunderstanding." It wasn't quite an apology, more a carefully worded non-admission that nonetheless acknowledged the incident had occurred. Celine recognized the political calculation behind it. The Vulgarians needed Earth's support on an upcoming trade resolution almost as much as Earth needed their mining rights. "Earth acknowledges the Protectorate's statement," she replied with equal formality. Something in Threx's posture suggested relief, followed immediately by renewed confidence. "Excellent. Then perhaps we might discuss the matter of your clearly excessive territorial claims in Cygnus. The Protectorate feels a 40% reduction would demonstrate Earth's commitment to equitable resource distribution." The demand was outrageous, clearly intended to establish dominance after the minimal concession of his non-apology. Before Celine could formulate a response, Threx continued, his translator conveying increasing condescension. Additionally, to demonstrate Earth's good faith, perhaps your quadrupedal accessory might be left in your quarters during future negotiations. Some species find its presence distracting. Fenris, who had maintained perfect stillness throughout the exchange, suddenly turned his head toward the central stage area, where dignitaries would later make formal addresses. Through their link, Celine felt his focused attention, like a targeting system, locking onto coordinates. Ambassador. His thoughts came with unusual urgency. I recommend you take 3 steps backward within the next 5 seconds. Years of partnership had taught Celine to trust Fenris's instincts. Without questioning, she smoothly stepped back, ostensibly to admire a floating light sculpture. I believe Earth's proposal already demonstrates significant compromise. Sub-envoy, she replied. As for Attaché Fenris, his presence is non-negotiable under... She didn't finish the sentence. At that precise moment, the central stage's gravity field abruptly deactivated. The effect spread outward in a perfectly calibrated radius that, somehow, encompassed exactly where Threx stood, while missing Celine's new position. The Vulgarian diplomat, mid-gesture, suddenly found himself floating helplessly upward, his limbs flailing in undignified panic. His aides, caught in the same field, fared no better, their exoskeletons clicking frantically as they tumbled in slow-motion disarray. The gala dissolved into chaos as security personnel rushed toward the malfunction. Other species either backed away or found themselves similarly afloat, depending on their position. Through it all, Fenris remained perfectly still, his amber eyes tracking Threx's ungraceful aerial somersaults with unmistakable satisfaction. Fenris, Celine whispered urgently, did you... Before she could complete the question, Fenris stepped forward. With deliberate calm, he walked directly into the zero-gravity field, his enhanced musculature and military training allowing him to control his movement where others flailed helplessly. With precise leaps from floating debris to overturned furniture, he made his way to the center of the disturbance. There, beneath the now panicking Threx, Fenris positioned himself, and for the first time since joining the diplomatic corps, he vocalized in public. The growl began low, almost subsonic, but the hall's perfect acoustics amplified it, sending resonant vibrations through every atmospheric bubble. It wasn't a threat display, but something more primal, a clear, unmistakable statement of power controlled. The assembly froze. Even Threx stopped his frantic movements, his compound eyes fixed on the canine form below him. Security technicians finally managed to restore gravity, sending the affected dignitaries ungracefully to the floor. Threx landed awkwardly, his exoskeletal segments clicking in distress as he struggled to regain composure. Into the stunned silence that followed, Fenris limped forward, a deliberate exaggeration of injury that nonetheless made his point unmistakably clear. He positioned himself directly before Threx, amber eyes unwavering. Celine stepped forward then, her diplomatic training warring with fierce pride in her partner. She placed her hand on Fenris's head in a gesture of unity that no one could misinterpret. The Earth delegation formally invokes Coalition Law, Section 5, Paragraph 3, she announced, her voice carrying through the still silent hall. Any assault on a credentialed representative merits public acknowledgement and appropriate consequences. Council Speaker Ilhan moved forward, his multifaceted eyes swiveling between the parties. The invocation is noted, he said formally. Does the Vulgarian Protectorate wish to respond? Threx's mandibles clicked rapidly, in obvious distress. The public nature of the confrontation left him few options, especially given the number of witnesses to both his original kick and the unmistakable reference Fenris had just made to it. The Protectorate acknowledges the regrettable physical contact he finally managed, his translator conveying stiff formality. In recognition of Earth's concerns, we withdraw our objection to their Cygnus mining proposal and offer formal apology. A murmur rippled through the assembly. For a Bulgarian to offer formal apology was unprecedented, a major diplomatic concession that would resonate through coalition politics for years. "Earth accepts the Protectorate's apology," Celine replied smoothly, "and looks forward to continued cooperation." As the gala gradually resumed, delegates approached Celine and Fenris with new respect. The Meridian delegate. Leora's crystalline form glowed with approval as she passed them, her facets refracting light in patterns that Selene recognized as amused satisfaction. "The fight in the dog," Leora's harmonics murmured, "often achieves what the diplomat cannot." The following day, the Coalition Council voted unanimously to approve Earth's original mining proposal, without the 40% reduction Threx had demanded. Furthermore, the Council issued a formal censure against sub-envoy Threx for conduct unbecoming a senior representative, a diplomatic black mark that would follow him throughout his career. Most significantly, by special resolution, Earth was granted full, equal partner status within the Coalition, 30 years ahead of the normal probationary timeline. The official citation mentioned exceptional diplomatic innovation and cross-species integration as justification. After the formal proceedings concluded, Celine took Fenris to Aegis IX's Solarium Park, a vast enclosed garden designed to provide familiar environments for all Coalition species. They found a quiet Earth-normal section with actual grass and trees imported from their home planet. Celine removed Fenris's formal diplomatic vest, allowing him the rare freedom to simply be a dog. He immediately took advantage, rolling luxuriously in the grass while she watched with affection. "You know," she said conversationally, "I should discipline you for interfering with station systems. It violated at least 7 regulations." Fenris paused his rolling to look at her, projecting smug satisfaction through their link. "The gravity malfunction has been officially attributed to routine maintenance error. No evidence suggests otherwise." Celine laughed softly. "And I suppose Threx's environmental system problems were also coincidental." "Station maintenance logs indicate no abnormalities," came his innocent response. She sat on the grass beside him, running her fingers through his fur. "You took an enormous risk, if they'd proven it was you." "Calculated risk," he corrected. "Acceptable probability of success versus potential diplomatic gain." His mental voice became more serious. He needed to understand that Earth is not merely tolerated within the Coalition. We are equals, all of us. The emphasis on all wasn't subtle. Celine nodded slowly, understanding the deeper principle at stake. This hadn't just been about avenging an insult, or even protecting Earth's interests. It was about establishing that in humanity's vision of the future, dignity extended to all sentient beings, regardless of form or origin. "Well, Ambassador Fenris," she said with mock formality, "your unconventional diplomacy appears to have succeeded where traditional approaches might have failed." Fenris rolled onto his back, exposing his belly in a gesture of trust that he showed only to her. Sometimes, the best response isn't to strike back immediately. Sometimes, it's better to wait and choose the perfect moment. "A lesson in patience from a dog," Celine mused, scratching his chest. "Who would have thought?" "Not just any dog," he corrected with dignity. "A diplomatic attaché." She laughed and lay back on the grass beside him, watching the artificial sky cycle through a perfect Earth sunset simulation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Earth's elevated status would mean increased responsibilities and scrutiny. But today, they had earned this moment of quiet triumph. "You know what the best part is?" she said after a comfortable silence. Fenris turned his head toward her, curious. "Threx will never, ever know exactly how you did it," she continued, grinning. "He'll spend the rest of his career looking over his shoulder, wondering when the dog might strike again." Fenris's mouth opened in the canine equivalent of a smile, his tail thumping against the grass. "Justice doesn't always require retaliation," Sometimes it's enough that they know we could. As the artificial stars began to appear in the solarium's programmed night sky, Celine reflected on how far they had come, not just as representatives of Earth, but as partners forging a new definition of diplomacy. In a universe of million-species complexity, sometimes the oldest bond between human and dog still had lessons to teach about loyalty, justice, and the quiet power of choosing when not to strike. Through their neural link, contentment flowed both ways, human to canine and back again, a circuit of understanding that transcended words. In that perfect moment of connection, Celine realized that true diplomacy wasn't about protocols or power plays. It was about recognizing the dignity in every sentient being, even those others dismissed as mere animals. And sometimes, it took a dog to teach that lesson to the stars. The Orion Trade Coalition would never be quite the same again, and neither would Celine. She had entered these negotiations as Earth's representative, determined to advance human interests through careful compromise. She would leave them understanding that true partnership sometimes meant standing aside and trusting your companion to fight their own battles, in their own uniquely effective way. Fenris sighed contentedly beside her, his mission accomplished, his dignity restored not through violence, but through cleverness. In the grand dance of interstellar diplomacy, he had introduced an entirely new step, one that would be studied and emulated for generations to come. Ambassador, he sent through their link as they watched the stars. I believe we have made our point. Indeed we have, Fenris, Celine replied softly. Indeed we have. And somewhere in the vast station above them, Sub-Envoy Threx checked his quarters' environmental controls for the dozenth time, finding nothing amiss, yet feeling, inexplicably, as if amber eyes were watching his every move. Justice, it seemed, sometimes came on four paws. The story of the human diplomat and her canine attaché spread rapidly through coalition channels, first as gossip, then as legend. Within a year, 3 other species had introduced non-humanoid representatives to their delegations. Within 5, the practice was commonplace. And if station maintenance crews occasionally noted unusual system fluctuations around representatives who showed disrespect to Earth's canine diplomats, well, such technical glitches were simply part of life aboard a complex interstellar facility. No one ever proved a connection, but no one ever kicked a diplomatic dog again. For Celine and Fenris, it was merely the beginning. Their partnership would go on to negotiate 17 major interstellar treaties, establish Earth's first extraterrestrial colony, and eventually rewrite the coalition charter itself to explicitly recognize sentient rights regardless of form or origin. But in quiet moments, when diplomatic burdens weighed heavily, they would remember the look on Threx's face as he tumbled helplessly through zero gravity, while below him, a supposedly mere animal demonstrated the perfect balance of power and restraint that defined true diplomacy. Some lessons, it seemed, required teeth to properly teach, but wisdom lay in knowing when to bear them and when a growl would suffice.